In this lesson, we're going to look at the benefits and usage of the Azure IoT services. If we look back to those skills that are being assessed as part of AZ-900, we're now going into this new set of objectives all about this describe core solutions and management tools, and then this particular set of objectives and skills around describe core solutions available in Azure. Now, this particular lesson, we're going to go ahead and explore the ones around Internet of Things. But then over subsequent lessons, we'll look at things about big data, machine learning, serverless compute, and then DevOps. So this is our focus for the next set of lessons. So what is Internet of Things? Today, anything that has a button or a screen has some kind of microcontroller unit. So we have some kind of device. It could be very, very simple, and it has some microcontroller unit within there. Now, many of them are not connected to the internet. And so they're configured with a certain set of capabilities. They have a certain set of protections maybe for what we know about today, but they can't be updated. So new threats, there's no way to give them additional protection. They can't get new skills or new capabilities. The Internet of Things is about the idea that we're then going to light up these things so they can actually connect to some cloud-based service. This is going to enable them also to talk to each other where I have lots of devices, but also go ahead and actually talk to some cloud service. This is both the idea of sending information. This is often things like telemetry, but also there's the idea that I can send, for example, commands. So I could send things like command and control to these devices. I could update firmware. I could say perform these actions on your unit. So I think a lot about telemetry going up to the cloud, but it could be other things, and then being able to send commands back. The benefit here is if there's this ongoing communication, I can update it. I can give it new capabilities. I can give it enhanced protection. But so too, there becomes new threats because now it is connected to the internet. There's a broader attack surface people can try and use. So I have new sets of requirements. I need to have very good security between these. I need to secure the communication. I need to authenticate, is this really who they say they are? Because yes, bad things can happen this way and make it do bad things. But likewise, I could think about sending false information by pretending to be this device into whatever that cloud-based service is. Now, this is the focus of Internet of Things, those various problems that we need to solve. Now, in the enterprise environment, I can think about huge ranges of devices that may have sensors, for example. And I need to gather that information to use as part of some service. Maybe it performs computations on it. Maybe it looks at those various values and uses things like machine learning to predict imminent failure. I can do preemptive maintenance to stop there being a failure. I want to get analysis to gain insight. And there could be thousands or millions of these sensors. Now, when I say the idea of sensors, and this is a big focus for the idea of metrics, they can be of huge numbers of different types that I'm gathering information on. It could gather GPS coordinates. It could be gathering temperature. It could be gathering acceleration. It could be gathering a picture. It could be gathering the amount of light. It could be detecting sound, tilt, the presence of different types of gas or smoke. Really anything can be enabled, and I have these sensors and I want to gather that information. Remember also, I want to be able to identify a particular device. Out of all those thousands and millions, I want to be able to authenticate that particular device in a strong way. And again, I want that management capability sent to a specific device, maybe send to a whole collection of device. So we need services around these Internet of Things to enable all of these different capabilities. And Azure has a number of services around this. Now, the first of those services is Azure IoT Hub. This is really a foundational service, and as the name implies, it's a hub where Internet of Things devices can communicate to. It's all about that idea of device to cloud telemetry. So I can think device to cloud. But it's also about enabling the idea of maybe it's a device to cloud upload, maybe some file I want to gather. So I'll say metrics, telemetry there. But it's also about cloud to device. I think that whole idea about command and control, also there's request and I get responses back to that. So cloud to device, hey, I want you to perform this operation, perform this action. The device to cloud is, hey, I'm giving you these metrics, or I'm uploading this file, or I have some request and I want a response back. So there's different types of thing. I'll put that kind of also request response as an option there. And what the IoT Hub is going to do for us, it provides, well, these endpoints that these devices can actually communicate to, but what it also does is give us that ability to uniquely identify each of the various devices. And what it's actually going to do is within this service, yes, there's that physical device, but what it's going to do is as part of IoT Hub, it creates this idea of a device twin. So a representation of that device within IoT Hub. And the benefit there is, in terms of interacting with this service, my application I write, I interact with this device twin. I can think about, well, the device twin captures the metrics about that are exposed through this, so I can look at that device twin. But also, if I tell it actions I want performed, so I configure those, hey, I want you to go and update your firmware. I want you to go and perform a restart. The next time the physical device checks in with the IoT Hub, it will see that there's this action waiting and it will perform it. So it gives me this great ability in terms of my application to interact with the devices without having to actually live be talking to the physical device. IoT Hub is responsible for that plumbing under the covers, and I can focus more on the functionality I want in my application. And all of this is via the various SDKs that IoT Hub is going to support. So IoT Hub is providing all the various flows required for this actually to work. It's providing me those various SDKs so I can then write my application and interact with it. And this is a really good option if my requirement is I just need connectivity to remote devices. I want to be able to send and receive. I want to get those signals. I want to get those telemetry, so those various types of metrics. I want to be able to push updates, and I want to write my own solution. I want to use the SDK to write my own solution. So I think about IoT Hub when I just need that basic set of capabilities, and basically I'm going to do my own application that is going to communicate with that SDK. So this is where that is the right solution. I just need something to provide that communication with the device, identifying it, and then give me the representation that I can then work with via the SDK. But I'm going to write code, write my application to actually do the work. So that's IoT Hub. The next solution we get is Azure IoT Central. So now we have this idea of IoT Central. Now I'm drawing it kind of on top of IoT Hub because it uses IoT Hub. What we're doing with IoT Central is if you think of IoT Hub, you could almost think as it's kind of a PaaS solution. It's giving me that framework, the SDKs on which I can write an application to work with IoT. IoT Central, I could actually think as more of a SaaS solution. It provides a complete solution because it's adding functionality on top of IoT Hub. So what it gives me is things like dashboards. Out of the box, it has different starter applications, so we'll do apps as well, based on many different industry scenarios. It has device templates for many types of device based on those types of industry. And the device template would have the various attributes of things like the metrics I would expect to actually receive. So it really addresses those common industry scenarios. And it helps me get up and running very, very quickly. Now, all of these things I can still customize. So it's given me a place to start, but I can change it as I need to. And when I think about these device templates, a really nice thing it actually gives me as well is simulated devices. So maybe I don't have a device actually connected yet, but it will simulate the devices that I enable for my application so I can start testing the things that I actually do. I can do things like add rules via a wizard. So it's kind of a graphical experience. And I could create a rule based on some telemetry, some signal from the device. It's over a certain value. And then go and perform these various actions. So I can think signal, condition, action. And those actions are vast. I could think, well, that could be, hey, send an email. It could be send an SMS. It might be call a webhook, which is just some RESTful endpoint. I can call things like Azure Functions. I could call things like a logic app. Remember those serverless solutions. And there's more. I can hook into my ITSM system, my ticketing system. So if you think about that, I could graphically create a rule that's maybe, hey, if I get this signal, maybe it's temperature, and it's refrigerators. If the refrigerator temperature goes above a certain value, I am now compromising what's in that refrigeration. It could trigger creating a ticket in my ITSM. So then someone actually goes and looks at that. And you can see, so it's actually got some nice little demos. If we jump over for a second, this is IoT Central. And you'll actually notice, I mean, there's great videos. I recommend you go and watch this. But here's the whole point. It has this idea of the IoT devices, gateway devices, IoT edge devices into IoT Central that then can hook into many other things to then help me see and visualize the data. But notice all of these industry standards, retail, energy, government, healthcare. I could pick one of these. Hey, I'll get started in retail. Well, now it's showing me some of the very common types of applications I may have, and it can then go and create that application for me with the dashboards, with the devices, and then it's all this GUI based. If I actually go and look at the IoT Central demo, it has that idea of, hey, the jumpstart. Then it has, hey, all these different types of devices that I can say to connect to it. And again, it can simulate those for my testing. It then has this nice management set of dashboards, and it has roles. So depending on the role I have, I would see different things in these dashboards. Scale is really to any level. I can create these hierarchies to break up how I see these things. Again, you can extend with all those different connectors, and then you can monetize as required. So the key point here is, if we think of IoT Hub was, hey, I want to write my own app, and I just need something to work with the devices, Well, IoT Central is where I want something out of the box. Then this is the right solution. I don't want to write a bunch of code. I don't want to interface with an SDK. I want to be able to get up and running super quickly with pre-built dashboards and pre-built solutions for my industry. That's where I would go and use the IoT Central. Now, I talked about at the start, well, there's this idea of how you have this microcontroller unit. Well, there's a certain element of trust and security in the hardware. There's the idea that then there's going to be an operating system here, and then a way to assure the security and integrity of it, that it's not been compromised in some way. And so if I have a scenario where it's really important to ensure the security of my IoT devices, if it's my wife's coffee machine, if it got hacked, hey, it might ruin a cup of coffee. Not the end of the world. But if this is a sensor on a medical device, if this is a sensor on some industry that's detecting something from a safety perspective, if it's something to do with maybe financial systems, I need to really make sure about the integrity and security of that complete end-to-end communication. And so that solution, when we think about end-to-end, is this Azure Sphere. And it is focused again on that end-to-end security. That's its job. And it's really built up of 3 different components. So we talked about this microcontroller unit. What we actually get with Azure Sphere, there is an Azure Sphere microcontroller unit. Let's just change that. Let's just go backwards for a sec. I was trying to write 2 words at once. So if we go back and we do the idea of Azure Sphere microcontroller unit. So Azure will actually go and license the technology to various providers who can then build these microcontroller units. There are various starter kits, and then you get these Azure certified microcontroller units. So that's kind of part 1, is this Azure Sphere microcontroller unit. Then you have the operating system. So the next part of Azure Sphere is actually this Linux-based OS that is a customized kernel, but once again, Microsoft are providing it to the various manufacturers. They are responsible for all the updating and maintenance of this kernel. And then what we also get for the third part is this idea of a security service. You'll hear this term AS3. And it's AS3 because there's 3 S's, the Azure Sphere Security Service. So the Azure Sphere Security Service is all about making sure there's not been a compromise, making sure there's not been some malicious software. For this identification and authentication with Azure Sphere, this is cert-based, so certificates. We want to use that. We don't really want to use passwords. So this Azure Sphere is going to use certificates as part of that authentication. And then once we have this in place, Azure can attest to the security and integrity of this particular device, whether it's talking to other devices or it is going to talk to other solutions. And then that's the end-to-end security. Then it would work with maybe something like IoT Hub or IoT Central. So this is all about the security side of that end-to-end flow, but it's not providing the services then about, hey, working with it and gathering telemetry and all of that stuff. The Azure Sphere is really focused on that end-to-end security. So if you have that requirement where security is absolutely critical, I must have the highest level of security and integrity, Azure Sphere is going to help provide that complete end-to-end with that Azure Sphere certified microcontroller units, with that customized Linux kernel, with that Azure Sphere, the AS3 security service, to ensure there hasn't been any malicious compromise and help me actually attest, hey, yes, I'm healthy, and help me authenticate to the service to make sure no one is impersonating me. So we have those selection of 3 services. IoT Hub, hey, it's going to handle that communication, the plumbing underneath to have those flows going, gather the metrics, let me send actions enabled via these device twins, but I'm writing my own app, but it's providing those SDKs. If I want something out of the box, well, hey, IoT Central gives me that. Lots of industry solutions. I can get up and running super quickly. Click, click, click. Dashboards, apps, device templates, simulates devices. Fully customizable. Create those nice little rules via a wizard. Hey, if this piece of telemetry is this value, go and perform this thing. And then if I care very strongly about security, I can add on Azure Sphere for that complete end-to-end assurance. So we might use combinations. Azure Sphere would not generally be on its own. I'm going to use one of these with it. But those are the collections of IoT services for Azure.